Heidi Ho campers, how you doing today? My name is Sharon Combs with UCDI, and this is Knowledge or Nonsense. And today we are going to be talking about working overtime, the benefits and the detriments. So without any further ado, let's just jump into it. Working 9 to 5, yes. So right now, you guys know we are where we are. We have begun to have like surges within the middle of the country now, not just in the concentrated populations. And people are having to work more. Before we knew they were doing more with less, but now people are actually having to work more, and we're beginning to see maybe some burnout, maybe. So we just want to talk about some of the benefits and the detriments of overtime from all perspectives, like from the person doing the overtime, from the budgetary area. So let's just jump right in there. Who's working overtime? Who's working overtime?
No one. We all are right now.
Right. How are we dealing with that?
It's tough. The new environment that we had to get accustomed to. I think it's so much harder because you're not necessarily taking your lunch break now, working from home. Those that are working from home, those that are trying to reach out to other facilities and companies, it's no more a designated work schedule. Now it's just you're trying to get everything done on the plate, and it's hard to basically put yourself first because there is so much to do, and you want to get ahead of the ball. But I think we should focus. There were some studies out there also that once you work past 40 hours, you're more prone to injury. I'll send the link a little later. It's in the Harvard Review that anything past 40 hours, you're at much higher risk because you're at a lower mental state and your body is exhausted itself. So whether you're working from home or working within the facility, you are putting yourself at risk. So it's a lot of things to be mindful about.
Yeah. I was going to say that you brought up a valid point because for someone in my position, I'm kind of balancing both. So there's opportunities when I can work from home, and then there's opportunities where I have to go in or I have to go visit a site. So that creates a little bit more of a different type of burnout because when I'm home, I'm mom and I'm working. And, and when the school was in session, it was, now I'm teacher, counselor, friend, nurse, everything all at one time. And it became very challenging to balance all of those worlds. And so that became a different type of overtime because now there is no on and off. I am constantly on and have to be available to everybody. And I think that's one of those kind of things that we really haven't talked about as a country. Like, what does that really mean for parents, even going back into the school year and what's going to happen come summer after summer break? But knowing that I'm in a position where my hospital needs me more now because we started doing elective surgeries again. So I need you there for this new trial. I need this education to go out. Competencies are due. I need you. No one cares about, whatever's going on personally. They're not saying it that way, but real talk, like, figure it out. Put your kid, like, I really have had those conversations. Well, the YMCA is open. Put your kid there. Like, okay. So this is the kind of the challenges that I have faced in this new COVID era, basically.
Oh, I think overtime, I think my perspective changed in overtime based on the position I was in, based on my age bracket, right? Because consider this, right? Now, as an executive member of a team, right, we traditionally work every day 10 or 12 hours, right? It's not even in concept. You would feel less accomplished to only work 8 hours. I don't think I can get all that I need done in just an 8-hour period, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I recall when I was a technician, right? I was just gunning for that extra decimal point, thinking in theory, I'll work more hours, I'll make more money. So I had a never say no policy. If there was overtime, I would literally tell my manager, you no longer have to ask me. Just put my name on top of that list.
Yeah.
You know, but it changes based on, for me anyway, the position and the type of work. I really want to read that article that Danny's going to send, because I've heard that truck drivers, for instance, who travel interstate, I have a friend, and this guy never works just a 40-hour work week, right? It's unheard of. And I would be curious to know what's the OSHA standard based on different professions. I would imagine it's quite different from nurses, right, than it is for maybe a truck driver or even a farmer, right? We know, as a matter of fact, American farmers work on average, 14 to 17 hours every day, right? Every day. So 8 hours. What are we going to do in 8 hours, right? I'll be curious to also know what's the average work time for an orthopedic surgeon, right? You think about how many total knees, right, are you going to do in an 8-hour period?
Right. No, absolutely.
Many as they can.
So it changes based on the position, I couldn't imagine anyone in leadership, or it's not just about leadership. It depends on the profession. If we tailor just the SPD, even as a technician, depending on the hospital, the nature of the environment, the team dynamic, the order of structure for trays, you can get very little done in 8 hours in the right level 1 trauma center in upper or lower America.
Yeah, I think you made a perfect point there, though. Salary versus overtime. People that are doing hourly. When I asked, I remember I approached a leader and I said, "Oh, you're doing some overtime." He said, "Overtime? This is work." He's like, "I'm on hour 60. This is just regular work. I don't get paid any more, any less." But the individuals that are doing overtime are basically the hourly employees, the technicians in the forefront. But then also, like you said, with truck drivers, I believe OSHA standard is that they only have to, they're only allowed to work a certain amount of hours.
Yes.
Or else they start, statistically, they do start getting into more accidents.
Right.
And
it's just 40 hours
to get off the road.
Not 40 hours. I believe it's, I forget, I don't want to say the wrong number, but I know they have.
I don't know what it is, but with truck drivers, pilots, all of that, they have to get off at a certain time, because that's why on one of the questions, it was like, how much is too much overtime before COVID hit? And before COVID hit, it's like, well, it's never too much overtime. But somebody who has worked with consultants, definitely when they first go on, or even travelers, they first go to a site and they're like, no, it's no problem. And they start working those 12 to 16-hour days. But after about like 3-4 weeks, that starts kicking in, and how they interact with staff and their attentiveness to detail. And so within sterile processing, at first, if you're hourly, you'll be like, all right, bet, maybe because you're getting the money, but your body, you're drained. And in COVID, like Lila said, there is no off button. Even if you're salary, there is no off button, because you're still thinking about what needs to be done. And there's still people who have a demand for you when you're not at work. So you don't really have downtime. And so that's what we just want to talk about, some of the benefits and the detriments of overtime. Hey, no shade. If you want to do overtime, do overtime. I'm happy for anybody to get extra money. However, I do think there needs to be some type of safeguards in place, because you don't want to have like Midas's, Sentinel events. You don't want to have that because you're tired or just
Yeah.
because you're not getting the proper rest. And so,
and you got to like throw on that quality assurance hat now, because part of my job title is quality, right? So when you start to see the production slow down or speed up, you always get leery of, okay, well, what's going to be our new error percentage rate, right? Because you know what's going to happen. Over time, typically, I end up seeing more errors in those types of trays, because now you've been working for 14 hours in the day. Even if it was sufficient breaks, it's still the quality starts to come down. So you have to decide, which one do you want? Do you want quality or quantity? Because at some point you're choosing as a technician over the course of your day. Because you can do the same tray 800 times, but I guarantee you $7.99 is going to be the one where you thought you didn't do something that you thought you did, or whatever. Indicators missing, scissors, you didn't do a quality check on some piece of instrumentation, and that's going to be the error that you get. It doesn't matter that all 798 before that was perfect. Ideally, at this point in time, now it's the issue. Now we have to file a report, and all you're sitting there thinking about is just that paycheck was really nice, but now I got to deal with this potential write-up for something that I probably could have avoided if I wasn't doing as much overtime.
And as someone said earlier, it was about sterile processing. As you work more overtime hours, those errors do increase. You start forgetting putting that indicator in, or making sure that tape is on there properly, or if you put the biological in, errors do start increasing, especially in our field where you have to be so meticulous and so on top of everything. That exhaustion, that fatigue really does impact our efficiency and effectiveness. So, and the leaders out there also have to be mindful of who they're giving overtime to, because some people are very vocal to say, oh, I'm willing to work those extra hours, and other employees may be as willing, but they won't be as vocal. So, but maybe they won't get that equal amount of overtime. So it's also great to keep in mind of how you're distributing that overtime, because sooner or later, once you see person A get too much overtime, you might start getting that resentment built in among your staff, saying, oh, look at this person, they always get asked for the overtime and I never get asked, even though I might be a senior or this. And then you have that divide in that team that adds that extra level of frustration into the whole mix of things.
So how much is too much? Like, how do we govern overtime? Do we govern it by hours? Do we govern it by amount of weeks that you have consistent overtime? What are some ways that you all have seen that work effectively? I mean, I know sometimes you're like, well, we have a need, but sometimes just that need can create another need if the people are not able to do what they need to do. Because now you have to have a conversation with your CNO and with the physicians if the error rate increases, or if your budget is out of whack. And so, how do we?
Or if you had union shop, like there's other parameters there that will govern that, even the whole process.
Facts.
Right. I can speak from a different perspectives. So from a manager vantage point, or even a director, you have to account for those overtimes and justify the need, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's gaps in the schedule. Sometimes you simply don't have the manpower to meet the demand from the operating room. But then there are also those events that you're short staffed and you utilize your only option. You can't get travelers in because of budget, right? Or wasn't written into the budget. There's maybe a hiring freeze. So now you're using overtime to satisfy those gaps. And to Danny, to your point, it's sort of a gift and a curse. You have, I learned a long time to stop painting things with a very broad brush when some things need to be painted with a fine scale. That you have some employees who can manage more hours overtime effectively and not make the mistakes of catching fatigue, while others who can work the same amount of hours, are gonna make twice the amount of mistakes. But if you compare both of in the same lane on a regular 8-hour day or shift, you'll find out that the employee making all of those mistakes during overtime is also making mistakes during the regular it's not just the additional hours. Right. But you have to manage it. There's so many that's an equation with more than one denominator, right?
Yeah,
depending on your environment. It may be filling some gaps. It may be poor management. I always teach new managers to manage your resources. I've seen in some cases where, we have a team of 8 people. Think about 8 people. I got 4 in decontamination, 4 in assembly, right? No one's in sterilization because, you're waiting for the trays to go in. Decontamination is being bombarded. And instead of sticking to that schedule, I urge you to take 1 or 2 or how many you need out of assembly and migrate them to decontamination, right? You got to push it out. So manage your resources. Some of us are sticklers to a schedule. If this says you're in sterile storage, there could be nothing going on in sterile storage. But you're in sterile storage, and the manager, is unaccounted for. So some of it has to do with lack of leadership, lack of organizational skills as a team, the team dynamic. Because there's a way to manage overtime effectively. People do it all the time and every time.
Yes.
As being a consultant and traveling to different places, something I hear very commonly is that we're short-staffed. And I remember being in a meeting where someone brought up that saying that, we can't get this done because we're short-staffed. And the executive director basically said, everyone is short-staffed. That's why we hire great leaders to manage our resources, effectively and efficiently. So, it is something mindful to always, you could say you're short-staffed, but you need that documentation to back up your claim. And that's why, going back to what Sharon said of what is too much overtime as a leader, if you're, what I say, if you're doing a shift of overtime every week, so let's say 40 hours of overtime every week, now it's a trend, now it's something consistent. So now you could justify that, look, when we're running our regular scheduled program, and we're still doing 40 hours of overtime a week, even though there's no one on vacation, there's no one calling in sick. Now you could justify, hey, maybe we do need an additional support within the department. But, if you aren't managing your resources, if you're not managing your staff properly, you see that those call outs are happening every other day, then, that's something you have to evaluate as a leader of how you could handle that problem before you fix something else.
But also, too much overtime is also contingent on your state and local laws, right? Some of it is a state-by-state difference. OSHA is going to tell us federally, 5 hours, 40 hours, etc. But they have some state laws out there that are much different than what we would imagine, and different across industries. I know we primarily focus on SPD, and Danny, to the point where, sometimes short staff is a cover up for being short skilled, right? Because I've made the point many a day that I could do more with a small amount of people who are highly skilled than a large amount of people who are mediocre in skill set. So again, that's back to understanding what that means. When you're in a crunch and you can pick your perfect team, like your dream team. Sometimes you could have 40 staff members, but your dream team is only going to consist of good 7 people, right? You're going to push the same amount of work with the least amount of errors and can go tray for tray, with the entire 40. So sometimes it's not just short staff, it's short skill.
Right.
Absolutely. And but you kind of battle that with the workflow, because I always find that when technicians get a little upset, something they ain't happy with management, all of a sudden work production slows down real slow. Well, and that's because we gonna get our overtime. So y'all not gonna make us work harder. We gonna get our overtime. That becomes the mantra now. And it's just secretly you see it. I'm gonna be like, we got all these trays down. And it's just like, and you already know it's happening because we've been told there's no overtime. The budget is restrained. We can't do but so much right now. And we're all feeling the pinch because they're not pushing the work out. They're not pushing the work out any faster. It's literally slowing down.
Oh, and that's something I've noticed in a lot of places, especially places that give out overtime. you know, 1 month before Christmas, all of a sudden that production's going real down, really. Really fast. Like, wait, what's happening? My whole staff is here. Why is production, you know, down 30%? You know.
That's right. That's right. And you also have to learn to manage and understand the laws of your facility. For instance, I once was over this unionized facility, and although it was mandated that overtime had to be shared equally, well, you couldn't share it equally if folks simply did not want to do overtime. They're like, no, I don't want it, right? And workers piling up, and you know, it was a unspoken protest, so to speak. So how do we managed to protest? You know, anytime we got more than 22 trays in a particular division on the shelf, that meant everyone on that shift had to stay overtime to manage the trays. And that was a form of motivation, because now we're gonna, you know, Danny's gonna take 5 trays. Now we all want to go home. We all want to go home, right? So you have to sometimes be creative. Unfortunately, you know, we're dealing with the most workforce ever, and not just SPD, but we're dealing with people, right? And there's so many different ranges of emotions and needs. It's hard to satisfy every single need without losing focus on the task at hand.
Right.
All right.
Oh, go ahead.
So we see where there's an author and CEO named Steve McConnell, and he's saying that there's a direct relationship between motivation and productivity, and an inverse relationship when motivation and number of hours that an employee works. Once that number exceeds 10 to 20% above a typical work week, so there's an inverse. Once they begin to work more, there's an inverse, like it's not going to have the productivity measure that you believe it's going to have. He does also say that regardless of hours worked, people who are not motivated will have a low productivity. And so I wanted to share that. Someone shared it with me, so I got it in a text, and I wanted to put it up there. Also, ESP, Evolve Sterile Processing, says flex with part-time positions, and said that trending with OT can create requirements for changes in benefits for the staff. I wish I could ask him what he means more about that as far as the changes in benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to know more of what he means by as far as like changing those benefits. So listen, I'm going to pop out and play a little brief break, a brief education break. When I come back, I want us actually to talk about some of the pitfalls of overtime, so that people who are working, we're in a high pressure, just in America right now, we have a lot more heightened emotions all the way around. And so I want to talk about what I call pitfalls of overtime, just something so that people can maybe identify if they are, look, if you're exhibiting symptoms of this sickness, then, you know, we want you to be able to recognize what it is, not to condemn yourself, not to feel bad, but just to recognize this is a natural occurrence, and maybe you need to take a break, or, you know, maybe not do that extra 10 hours this week and take a nap. So let us go ahead and play this. We'll be back in about 37 to 40 seconds. All right, and we're back. I want to thank LaWayne Perkins, president of CS Assist, Danny Vasquez, emergency consultant for sterile processing, and Lila Price, educator extraordinaire coming out of the East Coast area. Thank you guys so much for just sharing your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise with all of us within the CS Nation, within Sterile Processing Nation, because these are things that we're actually dealing with right now, especially as volumes have increased, but they're not bringing people on like back pre-COVID. And so people are actually dealing with overtime now. So if we could please, what are some of the pitfalls of overtime? Like, what are some identifiers that maybe you're about 2 seconds from burnout? You know, what are some things?
So to me, overtime was always one of those things where, depending on the shift, when I worked overnight, I never wanted to stay. Like by the time 6:30 hit, I was ready to go. So when I saw first shift, it was like I didn't care what else was going on. I needed to get home because and my children were younger at the time, so I knew that I needed to get to sleep while they were in school or whatever else was going on. So I never wanted to do overtime when I was on that shift. But when I was on day shift, yeah, I could stay 3-4 hours. I could stay another shift if you want me to, because my motivation was a little different. Because I was actually getting more sleep at night. So I think overtime for me, the will for it or the want for it changed depending on what shift I was on. Because I knew how it was going to affect me. I knew I was never going to get that sleep back if I worked overnight and went into first shift the next day. And also the dynamics were a little different. I mean, we all know the difference. Overnight, and no offense, I love overnight. It's my passion. But that phone's not ringing. The OR is not calling down looking for nothing.
Yeah.
You can pretty much, do what you got to do, and there's not too much pressure to get on you to get something turned over immediately or right away. You're really just preparing for whatever cases are coming the next day. So I think the time issue would change based on which shift I had to do, and that's just always been me.
No, absolutely. But I realize when you start working that overtime and it starts getting to you, realize you become a lot more, I want to say agitated, a lot easier, when you're nodding off randomly, just doing something regular, like looking at your phone and you're just like, I think that's time to take a self-inventory of what you need to prioritize more. Get that rest, get that good sleep in, a nice meal, and just take a nice warm shower and hit the bed. But I feel like we live in an environment where we feel bad not being able to take care of ourselves first and not putting work before us. And I think that's a mindset that we have to get out of. There's a lot of people, including myself, that I feel bad calling out sick when I'm sick. You don't want to call out, because your team needs you, but in the grander scheme of things, the bigger picture, you have to realize that your team also needs you at 100%. You being at 50% doesn't necessarily help the team. Sometimes, they have to pick up the slack for you, expecting you to be that 100%. So making sure you're at 100% is vital. So I think it's always good to put yourself, making sure you're at 100%. And something that Evolve Sterile Processing said about the part-time employees, yeah, and that's something that the leaderships a lot deal with when it comes to temporary workers. Especially if they're working in an area where there's unionized workers. Typically, they don't allow a temporary position to go on for longer than 3 months or 2 months or X amount of time, or else that justifies that there's a need for a full-time employee. So they would get absorbed into a full-time position. But leaderships are aware of this, and sometimes they like cutting corners and stuff. So.
Yeah. I also think to Sharon's question, you get brain fatigue. I can tell you now in New York City, I would work overtime and I would routinely miss my stop on the train because I entered what we used to call the line of nod. The line of nod is you just nod right off. You're so tired, and you're on the train, and you wake up. The cleaning crew's waking you up. So you definitely have to also understand your value and what's value to you. The money worked versus being able to walk your kid to school, right? If you work shift, or being able to miss those moments that you'll never get back. And I believe that good employees are challenged. Sometimes you feel like you're not doing enough, even though you're working at your top tier. You're challenged, like, could I do more? What am I not doing? And I call that the gift and the curse. Sometimes the best employees also get the most work, right? Because your manager knows you can handle it, or they think you can handle it because of your past performance, and they move forward. There's a old school, very, very old school American historian and sociologist named Lewis Mumford. Right, he's written a bunch of books. Right, but a lot of it's interesting to have a historian to look at a workplace and give a historic perspective over a large a large group dynamic or demographic. So you get a chance, just Google Lewis Mumford and look at some of his some of his books on civilization and workplace. Really impactful. I think we'll bring some we'll ferment this conversation. Yep.
Hey, I want to go ahead.
One more thing. I was leading up to the fact that my attitude was always different when I worked too much. Like that was probably the first thing that I would notice about myself, that, you know, that normal smile would start being like a roll eyes or whatever, because I just knew that I was getting fatigued. I was tired. And so the first thing that would change would be, you know, my disposition. And I think that was that's a major pitfall for anybody, because if you know, being fatigued starts changing who you are, is it really worth it to have to interact? Because you still have to interact with people. I don't care what job you're doing. If you're not solo, you got to interact with someone.
And so, like exhaustion, when exhaustion begins to make your decisions, exhaustion is going to make a decision that stops you from being exhausted. And sometimes that can stop income, relationships, right, you know, even health. And so I wanted to read these signs of burnout. I want to thank Warren Ness. He he had this quote in here from an article on LinkedIn, but it says signs of burnout include sadness, depression, irritability, frustration, isolation, poor hygiene, please take a bath, social isolation, feelings of hopelessness, and low job satisfaction. And so sometimes when you feel those things and you're working a lot, if you don't know that these things have, like, this has a name, like this is a thing. This is a thing, y'all. And if you don't know that, you will start assigning it to your manager, the lead on the shift. They don't ever do nothing. It has nothing to do with them. You just need a nap. You're tired. You need a 3-day or a 4-day weekend, you know, and you need to know that that's okay. That's okay. I've talked with a few people within Sterile Nation and, you know, within SPD Nation, and it's breaking my heart because they know they need the time off. Their body is hurting. They're frustrated. They're just like overwhelmed, but because they feel guilty. Yeah. If I'm not here, who's going to do the work?
Right.
I get that. But there's the part of me wants to say, if you get injured or hurt or die and are unable to do the work, trust me, someone's going to step in. Yeah. So I bless the loyalty.
Go ahead. Now with I've noticed that infection preventionists have started to take their vacations. I've seen them in my facility, like, you know, because it's now the time is like, whew, you know, we made it through and we know it's about to vamp back up. So we need to hurry up and take our vacations now. So I've noticed a lot of them have been taking their time. As I send emails, I see that out of office popping up, but I get it because they didn't have an opportunity. They've been on since February until just, you know, till mid-June. So that became a lot of burnout and fatigue, because even in those roles, you were constantly on call, constantly changing things. I mean, I think about how many policies changed in the last 4 months for most of us. We've either written new policies or had to adapt to new policies immediately and on the fly. And I feel it every day. So I think that that's the other part of it that may not come from a technician standpoint of now working overtime, but that mental fatigue, as I think LaWayne was saying a little while ago, like it comes with the territory now, because we're thinking outside the box and having to think more complex situations and how to save people and save budgets and keep people safe and fight a virus and deal with that in your home life, within your professional life as well. So we're all managing so many different things at one time.
And Lila, I would also add that, you know, I in no way support employees or employees being burned out, right? But also displays that you have to pass the ball, right? If you're the guy or girl in the department who knows all of the Cynthia's trades, and you're it, and you know Wednesday is Cynthia's day, and you can't stay, it will be advantageous of you to train someone else or tell your manager, I need support, and participate in that supportive role, right? Don't hog all the knowledge.
Let's hold on.
Yeah, you're
gonna hang out there a little bit.
You're already important. You can't have it all. You could if you want to, but let's know with that championship belt, WWF, comes employee burnout, come always being called first in class, first to come and last to leave. So share the wealth.
But and I think you mentioned something very important.
Interesting thing you're about to touch on. So let's go.
Yeah, I'm about to open it way up. Go on. Go ahead, Danny.
Something important that in a lot of facilities, especially ones that I've been to, they have these. It's set up where the employee is just specific on one place for their whole entire job. So if they're on prep and pack, they're on prep and pack every day, every month, every year. If they're on decon, they're on decon every month, and something that's very important is to cross train your staff. Make sure they're experts not only in decon but in prep and pack and in sterile storage and in the deliveries, because when you have your A1 wrapper out sick or out for a week, now what do? Now you're scrambling trying to train people on the fly of how to do things, and it's difficult. That's why when you have that lull time, it's good to cross train your individuals and your staff to make sure they're experts in all fields and all the processes within SPD.
All right, guys, I want to roll this back. That's a great point, Danny. I want to roll this back to what LaWayne said. And he said you have to be able to pass the ball, but typically, like that's a learned thing, and you have to get to that point. Typically, people who have high productivity, they're so used to receiving the ball, especially if they're not in leadership, they haven't learned how to pass that ball. Delegation is a skill. What do you mean pass the ball? The tech is not going to know how to delegate or how to pass it on. They're just thinking this is what, they may know, but a lot of them don't. They're thinking this is what has to be done. This is what has, so their head's down. They're doing it like a football player, high knees and head down. And so I like that point, but I must ask you,
absolutely,
is that a realistic or feasible thing for us to expect from the support staff and the lead techs? Because if they're a peak performer and high productivity, they're so used to being high productivity until they're frustrated and experiencing some of those symptoms, that irritability and frustration, and then they're throwing the ball at people. They're not passing it off. They hit somebody.
Oh, Sharon, you're a coach, or like
I am.
Like literally a coach, and as a coach, you can't be on offense and defense at the same time. It's not possible in any sport. You can't do it at the same time. So passing the ball, you may not have to pass on the entire responsibility, but segment it. I know, Danny may be super strong in every area. Hey, Danny, why don't you teach me how to rap? How you rap? I can't do the Synthes trades per se or the Lammer trades, but you can teach me how to rap. You can give me a portion of it. You can share the wealth a little bit. And you can't pass the ball to anyone, right? That has to be a criterion, right? You can't pass to anyone. Some folks are gonna drop it the moment you envision them getting the ball. So,
well, you got to ask yourself this point: are you Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, or like I'm saying, like who are you in this championship game right now?
I'm sorry.
Right? Because that makes a difference. Who are you passing to? Who's for the assist? I think that we all know who our key players are, right? We all know that going in.
But that's when your skills as a leader come out. Like Wayne was saying earlier, back when I didn't know about how to delegate stuff, I took it personally when the work was taken from me, when I needed that rest, when I was becoming irritable, and I was taking it personally. I'm like, why? I could do it. Just give it to me. And that's when, good leadership comes in. He's like, I need you at 100%. You did a fantastic job. You did what we needed, but I need you, to get some rest, I don't need you to break down on me or anything like that. That's when, you come in and basically let's share that wealth, let's share that knowledge, pass that on, teach another colleague. That's how you make your technicians become leaders themselves, put them in these positions where they could guide other technicians or, teach them how to be as good, if not better than you.
I think one of the viewers said Dennis Rodman. Yeah, I'm gonna go with John Starks. You know, as my chief delegator.
I love
you gotta know your team. You know, I know this sort of about overtime, but if you find yourself in a continual bind that you're always back to square one or always being reversed back to go, you may want to look at your hiring practices. You may want to look at what type of skill sets and personality type you're attracting to your department, right? Because a mere job listing, you know, there's a job posting. There's no emotion in that in black and white ink. You know, the emotional connection happens at the interview. That's when you have the opportunity to understand: can I pass this person the ball? You need to really ask yourself that. You know, is he or she going to be, a team player? Do they have the skill set to connect theory to application? Do all of their digits work the way I need them to work? You know, so
or even the culture. If the culture there is supportive of all that, because as Danny was saying, it's a valid point when you talk about the fact that you start to feel that when people start leaving and pulling some of the work off of you, you start feeling like if you're not living up to the challenge or rising to the occasion. So what part of the culture is making you feel that you're not good enough or if you're not doing everything, right? Because we feel that I feel the pressure all the time. I got to do everything because it's my name on it anyway. So now I got to go make sure that it's, it's Lila approved and Lila stamped. No one cares. But at the end of the day, it's me. My name is on there. So I want to make sure that it's valid and it's solid every single time they see my name on a competency. Everything.
Maybe you're on the wrong team, right? if you're still working on 100 Monday to Friday, and all your effort, and no one's catching on, and you're giving the feedback, you're giving the time, the delivery, the effort. Maybe you're on the wrong team. You may need to divorce that team and engage in a new relationship.
You know what? All right, my contract. We'll see what happens in negotiations.
Now that I'm working from home, I have a coworker that's annoying every day. My son walks in my meetings, disrupting my workflow. It's hard. It's an ongoing joke now with my team, but it's like you said earlier. Working from home is a whole different beast. So, you have to deal with a lot of different coworkers now.
And at first, when you're working from home, you're like, "Oh, I get to work from home, woohoo!" Like, yeah, but no, it's not like yeah. It's not like yeah at all because you are not off. Like you really, you can be off, but again, that is a skill set that must be mastered, and you have to learn it. I'm trying to navigate it myself, especially these COVID times. Things change. It's like, okay, we can go out now. I'm down here in Texas. Now they didn't shut everything, but the doors have shut again. Now we're back in. I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. And so you're like, what can I do? What can I not do? But there's still this work that has to be done. And so, and so that's what I'm saying. Like with overtime, a lot of times as we grow, it's kind of like success. When people first start working and you say, tell me about success, people be like, I want to be paid. If you ask a teenage boy about success, a lot of times, I want the money, I want the girls, I want the cars, I want the clothes, And then he grows a little and gets a little more mature, and there's a little more emotional maturity and financial maturity, just life maturity kicks in. And then you ask him that same question when he's in his 40s, and he's like, I want to take a nap at 3. I want to own my own time. Like I don't want to have so much money that I don't have time. Like, and I feel the same way with overtime. When people first start going for overtime, it's like, oh, I'm gonna make this money, it's this check, such and such. But then again, things kick in, and physically, there's no way that consistent overtime, sustained week in and week out, there's no way that does not affect you mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally. There's effect.
Right, you gotta manage your team as well. I had a circumstance. You get those facilities and someone from the C-suite is unlimited overtime, and as a manager, you expect if you're getting 13 hours overtime, you want to see. I want to see 13 hours of results. I tell myself, if I'm gonna work 13 hours, these 4 holding carts should be empty. I should be able to see the tile on the floor, right? But you come in and you know it looks more like you paid out 13, but the results look more like 2 hours overtime.
Yep.
You know, so I remember a circumstance. I would routinely pop in on night shift, but this particular day, half the shit was sleep. You know, I'm like, this is ridiculous. But so we gotta, knowledge of nonsense. You giving out overtime, giving out 13 hours, or you seen a half an hour results, you may want to do a little more digging.
Right.
Yes. And so I wanted to ask, we talked about some of the pitfalls of overtime, which again is you can get burned out. Your attention to detail can be skewed. It cannot be there. I just want to be sure that we're saying what some of the detriments are of overtime. Also, it could eat up a large portion of your budget. So the things you do need are wanting to implement or bring into the department, whether it's another person, whether it's a tracking system, whatever you're wanting to bring in, like it can eat up those resources. And so there are some detriments to overtime. Overtime is necessary. It is necessary, but right now we know that there are procedures that were put on hold, and now people are doing elective surgeries again down here in Texas. They've cut those off again. And so that work is going to come, but it's coming for less people. And for the people who are doing the work, I just want you to know what some of the telltale signs are that there may be some burnout. I want you to know that it's okay for you to be like, listen, I've worked 16 days straight. I need a break. I need a break. And so also I wanted to ask those who are listening right now, guys, feel free to share this video. What are some benefits and pitfalls that you've seen out there? If you could put that in the comments of overtime. Maybe overtime came in a crunch and you were able to pay off some things and double up on some loans, student loans, whatever, or what are some of the benefits and pitfalls you've seen? And go ahead.
I was going to add into it because for me, I look at it from the education and training aspect, right? It's part of my job. When is overtime, like when have you crossed the threshold into new employee to now being able to work overtime? Because that's always a question and it's always debatable for me because I feel like I'd rather you be there 6 months so that you've gotten every possible scenario before you start hanging around and getting into that overtime. But sometimes, things change. But I just want to get a management perspective because I feel like my perspective is always different and it's always skewed towards, are you trained well enough to handle that part of the job?
Oh, that's interesting. And Lalo, we have to, as managers, right? You have to budget in labor costs, right? You can't just think you're working on an endless piggy bank. You have to budget labor costs. That's including your salary, your wages, overtime, taxes, insurance. And even when you drill down, the goal is to always have a balanced budget, but there's a surplus budget as well and a deficit budget, right? These are real factors that CFOs across the country have to manage, and overtime creeps right up in there. Just imagine, I without Googling the statistics, I would imagine nurses do way more overtime on average, FTE per FTE than SPD, right? Do way more overtime. But it has to be tied directly to patient health. So good managers, to Sharon's point, you have to budget overtime into the equation. It shouldn't be a surprise. You have to be able to project certain outcomes and scenarios based on your work volume, based on your department skill set, and based on the environment.
Yeah, like going from 35 cases to 100 in a matter of a week and a half because COVID versus, COVID. Post-COVID.
That's right. You knew that was going to happen when you hired them 3 new doctors.
Right.
You knew it was coming.
All the time.
Right. But
even before COVID. Oh, go ahead.
Something that Ms. Cherry said earlier is you have to be able to justify that overtime. You can't just give away all this overtime all year and then expect that at the fiscal end when you're in that meeting with your boss saying, why did we spend $2 million on overtime? And you just like, we need it to work. That's not gonna fly. So
Danny, you know how we fix that? You tie in overtime expenses to executive bonuses. See how fast you have a balanced surplus budget.
Oh yeah, that'll work good. No overtime for me. No.
Sorry, something now, Dwayne.
You know, balanced budget forever.
You got to give them incentives.
That's right. That's right.
You're not going to be a good leader. We're gonna make you into one. You know.
Excellent. Kim says pitfalls are errors being made. That's one of the pitfalls. Errors being made. Karen Cherry said you're never truly satisfied by work until you're satisfied by life. If you are exhausted or dealing with emotion and frustration, then obviously that's not a satisfactory feeling. And so it'll be hard to be grateful for the things that you have because that will influence you. Scott said one of the benefits is get out of debt and save for future endeavors. Mm-hmm. You know, like when Dwayne was like, you don't have to even ask. If it's overtime to be had, put me on the ship. And so we see some of those points. And I think, Dwayne, you did speak to the hidden costs of overtime from the executive team's viewpoint. And that's what you were saying, you know, tie that strained budget or that, what's it called when it's over?
Surplus.
Right. Yeah. When you've gone, no, not surplus. When you've gone over budget, there is no surplus.
Deficit.
You've blown the budget out of the water, and you said tie that to their bonuses and see if people can be a little more innovative, a little more creative, and people will begin to find ways to do things. Oh, here, let me throw this out here right quick. For those of you who are in leadership, you may be new to management, or maybe you've been in management for a long time, and you're like, well, we need more staff. We need more staff, and you're consistently having overtime. Maybe use some of the tools. I saw someone put 9box as a great tool to evaluate your staff. Also, I know CS Assist has lots of online tools for you, documentation. Dwayne can help you with that. There are ways that you can navigate overtime so that you're not always under the weight of it. And if you're in management, you want to be able to save your organization money. You want to be able to show where there have been significant cost savings. Since
hey, Sharon,
yes.
You want to become the overtime whisperer? Call CS Assist. We can tell you. We can tell you how to predict what's coming down that pike and how to avoid that hurdle.
Hey, that's excellent.
Yes. All right. Donnie says employee advantage, more money. Employee disadvantage, burnout. Burnout. Yes. Yeah. And you know what else comes with burnout? You become so cynical. You become so cynical. Health issues. And so health issues, yes. Come on, let's talk about it. Health issues.
I think I saw their cardiovascular issues rise. And I mean, I've known people who have talked about in sterile processing who've had heart attacks, like literally in the department because they were working that much, that hard. And I immediately was just like, that's, to me, it just seems so odd because it's like, why would you put this job before your health? Because tomorrow, if you're not here, they're going to post the job anyway. So it's just like, you got to balance out, you know, quality of life versus your employer and what they need from you. But I've heard that story so many times, so many different hospitals.
I think that's a learned behavior, Lala. Because many people, especially technicians, you know, for some it's their first job, you know, out of school. For many, it's the first time they have ever felt value, right? It's your first time in a relationship ever feeling value. You want to give it all times 10. And some of us would either ignore the clear signs that something may be going wrong. So again, we always use the mantra, get a mentor. I think it's it's very important because a good mentor has experience, almost everything you're gonna experience in that field. Like if you're a brand new technician coming into the department, I can tell you almost day by day, the emotional toil, the joys benefit, you know, your first team meeting that you get to speak up, you know, from going from that scared tech in the corner to being, you know, in a break room where someone's telling you happy birthday. So I hold firm that getting a good mentor, someone who can really, you know, support you and
Yeah, I got 5 mentors. Like I have just a plethora of people that I can call to for various different things. I had something going on this week and I was just like, and I haven't even made it through the whole list, but I've been chucking away at people like, let me run this by you real quick, because you need that sense of, sometimes you need the validation of knowing like you're not crazy, it's real.
Yes.
Feelings are valid, and we're going to get through this, and they give you some strategy points to get through whatever it is. So
Yeah, and you need the team for that. That's part of passing the ball as well. Maybe not just even your work ball, but the emotional ball, the thoughts that you're having. If you're only having conversations with yourself about something, especially something that you're not familiar with, it's in your best interest to have a mentor, to have somebody who can help you navigate, who understands the terrain, so to speak.
Sometimes your worst enemy, you get into your own feelings and your thoughts, and that's when anxiety and your nervousness start acting up and start bringing you down. So it is good to have that fresh pair of eyes, those to
it starts making your decisions, and you don't want that to make your decisions. Now, I do want to say this: if you're at a point where you're just like, "Oh my God, I can't," and you're hitting snooze 17 times because you never want to get up, then maybe like Lil said, you might be on the wrong team. It might be time to, take an assessment of where you are, and maybe start fresh or look at doing something different. But also with that, you don't want that to make all of your decisions. You don't want that frustration or that exhaustion to make all your decisions, because those are not informed decisions. Those are emotional, just like, your hands are in the air. You've thrown your hands up. You've thrown in the towel, and you don't want to make decisions from that place.
So Sharon, one question for the team. My last question. Is it possible to always win?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Even when I learn something, I win. I
was gonna say, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
You're learning.
Oh, I think it's always possible to win. It's just how you define a win.
Yeah. I was gonna say yes, but no. Some of my best wins have come from what others would call failures. Hey, I want to share this story. You said last question. Some of I get to referee basketball, right? So I was at a camp, and I was at a camp with this dude who was at the camp too. He was an official, basketball official. He was going to medical school, and he had failed the test. He failed it pretty bad. And immediately I was like, I'm so sorry for you, man. Just because, when people fail a test, you want to encourage them. You can get it next time. And he was like, no, I'm glad I failed. And I was like, what? And he said, I'm glad I failed the test. He said, I would have hated to have passed the test and not knew what I needed to know. So he was happy that he failed then, because it made him realize, no, you don't know this. He's like, I'd rather fail here than fail on a body. And I was just like, and that shifted my whole perspective. Hey, that's IDS and IREF for those of you who are in the reference. But that shifted my whole perspective, like on failure. Because I'd never heard anybody, I heard people say you learn from failure, but I never talked to somebody one-on-one who I was trying to encourage, and they were like, no. He meant it too. He's like, no, I'm glad I failed it, because I would have thought I knew something I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's what you're saying, LaWayne. We're all saying, yes, it is possible to always win, but sometimes that winning looks like learning.
Yeah. Sharon, I'm not sure if you saw Mary Jo's question earlier. She wanted to know what the different abbreviations after our names were. So you guys want to explain what they are?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's do it.
Sharon got like 25 initials, so
whoa.
I'm only going to talk about 20 of them. So let's just start it. You want to start, Lila? You can talk about your initials.
The CER is for, I saw her question. So she's a CRCST. So I have the CER, which is Certified Endoscope Reprocessor. CHL is Certified Healthcare Leader. And they're all, and of course, by CRCST, all of those are under ISHM. So, and I'm currently working on my CIS, which is the Certified Instrument Specialist. So hopefully that will be the end of my acronyms. And again, I'm also trying to work on that fellowship. Now that that Sharon Green Goldman has inspired me to work on that fellowship, I am trying to work on that as well.
Let's do it.
Yeah, like Lila was saying, they're all under ISHM. The CIS is the Instrument Specialist, and the CHL is Healthcare Leadership. You could get them after you get the CRCST, and then, or you could just jump straight after the CRCST into fellowship. But it's good having those extra, abbreviations after your name.
And the only other ones on mine, I'm also a certified dental assistant, so a CDA.
All right. CHBC is a certified human behavior consultant. I am a human behavior consultant. I love human behavior. And UCDI is the name of a company that I have. It's called UCDI Leadership. We're the ones who host this show. We're sponsored by SIPS Consults and CS Assist. And they sponsor the show so that we can actually we can all learn together, but we can get back to this community that we're a part of and bring education, innovation, just a forum for discussion of some of the things that are going on pre-COVID, during COVID, and even post-COVID of how we are operating. Is it knowledge or is it nonsense? Is the practice, does it make sense because someone's doing it, or is it still nonsense and there's a better way to do it? And so that's what, we're glad you're in training to become a CRCST. We wish you much success on your test. You can do it. You can do it. There are plenty of tools out there to help you be successful in that. And yes, and I'm a CRCST as well. So thank you so much for that. I want to put this last banner in here from Donnie Payne before we leave. And it basically says, when overtime becomes the answer for every misschedule, two very bad things happen. The employees get addicted to the better lifestyle purchased with the company's overtime dollars, and the manager learns that it is less confrontational to meet schedules with overtime than it is to ask employees to focus energies on task completion.
I like that. Thank you, guys.
Amen.
Yes.
Nothing to say after. It's like a mic drop.
Yeah.
Oh.
So really, I don't have anything else to say except thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're going to leave that comment. We're going to leave that comment. As a matter of fact, I'm going to try to copy and paste it. Or where did it? Oh, it'll be in the comments. We're going to leave that comment there. Thank you guys so much for joining. LaWayne, Danny, Lila, thanks for sharing your Tuesday night. If you have any questions, please email us at info@ucdileadership.com, or you can ask your questions in the comments. Hopefully we'll see you Saturday. We're going to talk Saturday. We're going to start talking about ways to help you find employment. I know there's a way. We've been doing it with Indeed and talking to your recruiters and going different places, but there are now more bodies than there are positions at this moment, but there's so many positions. So we're going to talk about some ways that will help you position yourself for these positions and position yourself to present yourself for these positions without being afraid and without coming from a scarcity mindset. We'll do that Saturday, every Saturday of this month. We're going to do that. We'll share ways with you there. All right. Anything further, guys?
Have a great night and thank you. Great show.
Great show.
Hi, Trey. Thank you. Night, y'all.
Night, everybody.